The transformations each Anointed undergoes on their pilgrimage into Hell are as surreal and varied as the horrors of Hell itself. Flesh that perpetually burns and blisters, or is riddled with frostbite, or coruscates with an abundance of eerily luminescent veins. More varied still are changes brought about by the unspeakable deeds and damning pacts made in a desperate bid to survive beyond the Hellgate. Most refuse to speak of their journey upon their return to their legion, killing any foolish enough to ask them with all the frenzy of an uncaged beast. But the one thing all Anointed share is the undeniable power granted them by their dreadful trials. For some, this strength comes with a desire for independence, causing them to cast off their past allegiances and seek out the savage freedom of the heretic naval fleets. It is known that the heretic fleets boast a far looser structure than their shore-bound legions do, sometimes with hierarchies that vary from vessel to vessel. Yet it is inevitable that the Anointed heretic raiders are found in the upper echelons of a ship's pecking order, most commonly serving as first mates or boatswains to the heretic captains. There they enjoy the privilege of lording their intimidating strength over their fellow crew, enforcing the word of their captain, if only for the opportunity to brutally punish the slightest act which could be construed as mutiny. The only limit an Anointed respects when distributing said punishment is that of their own imagination, which has been vastly expanded during their pilgrimage to Hell. The start of a battle with Yahweh's lapdogs is often a relief to the rest of the heretic crew, for it means that the insensate cruelty of the enforcers will be directed elsewhere, for a time at least. Whether it be a boarding action or a raid on a coastal settlement, the Anointed become the bastion of muscle and patinated brass upon which the faithful break. They bear the heaviest arms and armour used by naval raiders, from forearm-mounted machine guns to blades heavy enough to split a man in twain. The reinforced plating of their diving suits make them a living bulwark, walking through enemy fire as if it were naught but sea spray, inured to any pain by the constant supply of Stygian gases circulating throughout their breathing apparatus. The many eye holes of their visors grant them vision not only of the physical world, but a form of hallucinogenic Geist sight, cultivated by the gas, allowing them to perceive stimuli normally imperceptible to mortal senses, such as pheromone trails, the faint electricity emitted by thought, and even the movement of divine power through the soul. This ability to hunt even when denied the standard senses makes an Anointed heretic raider a relentless and unavoidable predator for those unlucky enough to attract their attention in a skirmish. Despite their beyond human physicality and propensity towards violence, the souls of the Anointed heretic raiders are still human, and as such remain subject to the intoxicating power of sin. None has taken greater advantage of this than Leviathan itself, the great beast of the oceans cast down and cruelly bound by the throned tyrant. As a mighty beast of envy, and once prince of Invidia, Leviathan knows all too well that it is those that aim to evidence their strength and superiority at any given moment that are the easiest to manipulate. It can sense the weakness in the spirits of many Anointed, the fear that despite their brutish strength, they will never shake the vulnerability they felt when they walked the smouldering ash of the underworld. The abyssal serpent needs only to bring that fearful part of the Anointed soul to their attention for but a moment, a fleeting instant of awareness that others may be stronger, in order to have them willing to petition them for power. Over time, Leviathan's grip has tightened around Anointed hearts to form an entire fleet of worshippers known as the Leviathan Shoal. Adopting the shark as their totem, the Leviathan Shoal mercilessly slaughters the weakest of their number, so that only the very strongest survive, earning such a reputation that Anointed from other fleets abscond to prove their worthiness to join the crew. They endlessly prune the weak from their ranks, sacrificing their flesh and blood in Leviathan's name, and cannibalizing the dead in frantic rituals, both in devotion to Leviathan and to obsessively display their difference from the vanquished. In battle, they favour melee weapons to further demonstrate their brutality, often eschewing heavier blades in favour of the curved knives used for their rites, already tiny tools further dwarfed by their hulking physique. Indeed, so frequent is their butchery that great swarms of sharks, eels, and other predatory fish follow the ships of the Leviathan shoal in hungry anticipation. When the slaughter is done, the feasting begins on friend and foe alike, the survivors growing fat on the ruin they cause and tossing their remnants to the ever-present sharks that roil in their crimson wake. A common tradition for whichever Anointed has fought their way to the captaincy is to test the strength of their crew by calling the challenge of the chosen sun. There, each of the Anointed doffs their armour and weapons and dives into the following shoal. And whoever slays the largest shark barehanded is given the title of Chosen Son, along with the honour of affixing its corpse to their diving suit as a trophy. A great irony persists that those in the Leviathan shoal who are so fixated with being seen as the chosen of their pack are deeply submissive to established hierarchies of power, and it is this seed of envy that the heretic captains cultivate in order to attain the true blessings on offer from Leviathan. Alrighty, so some fun lore this week, some expanded lore on the Anointed units of the Naval Raiders. Now this is pretty cool. It started with a sea shanty. I didn't pop that in for some reason. I'm not sure why. I think it's always hard to do these in a way that sounds like serious, in the way that I like to do the delivery of the lore. But the sea shanty is as follows. Lo, drink up, for mother doth follow, a bottomless bottle for bottomless sorrows. Her fangs are steel, her eyes are hollow, so drink up tonight, 'cause you can't tomorrow. Lo, drink up, for mother don't sleep, as pointless to run as it is to weep. Her skin is brass, her claws cut deep, so pray that the Lord your soul to keep. Lo, drink up, for mother is near, the smell of grog hides the smell of fear. Her swim makes no wave, no footsteps to hear. She'll drag you to hell before you know that she's here. Lo, drink up, for mother has come, so savour what shall be your last taste of rum. And that's a folk shanty about the mother of dread, Anointed of the drowning of innocence. So overall, I really like this lore, and it kind of does what we predicted a little bit with the Sniper Priest lore, where there's definitive power creep as we find out more and more and more about these folks. So initially, the Anointed were just people who had made their pilgrimage into hell. They had been evil enough to make it past the gates and make it to the lake of fire and baptize themselves within there and attain their anointed status. Now we learn a little bit more about it, that the lake of fire can have some more interesting effects, and the implication here is that not all these Anointed will end up in the same level of hell, basically. Some will be in, I think it's the third in this one that's like super cold, and so on and so forth. And there can be different impacts and different effects. And so previously, the gas in the tanks, the main implication was that it would allow the heretic naval raiders, including the Anointed obviously, to survive for a time underwater. But now we learn that they also garner a lot of their powers and abilities from them. They have this hallucinogenic Geist sight that allows them to perceive stimuli normally imperceptible to mortal senses, such as pheromone trails, electricity from your brain, and the movement of divine power through the soul. So the heretic naval raider Anointed is really being set up here as that Michael Myers-esque threat, where you can run as far and as fast as you want to, and it's just going to keep coming, that it will somehow know where you are, and it will reach you and kill you. And that's that's a classic for a reason. There's that there's I've always really enjoyed that basically in horror movies because it adds so much tension and allows the director and the writer to mess around with the pacing of everything because you can just have them arrive. It's always been one of the more fun tropes in horror movies, in that kind of slasher killer genre, where they just arrive. You think you're away and you think you're safe, and next thing, ba-ba, they're there with you. That's kind of what these guys do. That's pretty much what they fall into. So they have definitive in lore power creep anyway. How that's going to be represented on the table, or even if it will be, or even if it has to be, I don't know. But it's very, very fun in the lore from that point of view. I really like it when the lore kind of makes this point that hell and the denizens of hell and the people within hell are extremely varied. It's something that I run into a lot with some comments in certain areas, and not like on my channel either or anything like that, but sometimes on the Facebook and on the official Instagrams and even on other people's TikToks. I find people can have an unusually limited view of how they think certain sins and certain powers would manifest in hell. And it's not often you see anointed who are not somehow just like burned guys. So I think it's really cool to see a little bit more than this coming from the lore, and once again kind of poking and prodding people and thinking in interesting directions. So basically it kind of turns a little bit the lore for the Anointed on their head, and there's some interesting stuff you could read into here that it's difficult to escape your weakness, whatever weakness it is that kind of drove, weakness as in like, spiritual weakness, drove you to align yourself with hell in the first place, continues to haunt. They don't get to escape that just because they're now anointed. That's, if anything, is used to hook them in. It talks about they keep having to make these deals along the path, like they're probably selling bits of themselves, essentially, like degrading themselves in a spiritual sense in order to just make it to where they need to be to become an anointed in the first place. And after that, you're not really going to be your own creature. These guys, specifically for the naval heretics, then they kind of, maybe they react to that. Some of the personality types react to that by seeking out these heretic naval fleets to tell themselves, like, oh, I'm still my own man, like, I'm still my own guy. And all these guys end up in the heretic naval fleets. But even there, they become susceptible to being pushed towards the influence of Leviathan. So these dudes are just susceptible to shit. They're malleable brains, malleable souls and spirits who can be manipulated into different directions by different people, even if they are incredibly physically domineering and brutish and all that kind of stuff. So it's fun lore, and I like it a lot considerably. I kind of constantly feel like hell is a little bit misunderstood in Trench Crusade, in the same way that I find people tend to misunderstand chaos a lot in 40k, and there tends to be a default that, like, if something is a bad guy, then like it's kind of strong and evil and happy in its lot being evil, whereas in Trench Crusade that's clearly not the case. A lot of these evil things, a lot of these evil elements, there's tremendous amount of insecurity and weakness that runs through them. And it's the core of that is supposed to counter the strength of faith that the faithful are supposed to have, and allow the simplicity of the human form to stand up against and even succeed against these terrifying denizens of hell. Like, I would have thought that was kind of pretty fucking obvious, but there you go. I guess not everybody is into like reading into it in that sense and in that way. So yeah, like, really fun lore, really fun and interesting. I really liked the bit about the Leviathan shoal. I would hope, I don't really want to put this out there because the chance of it happening, I guess, are reasonably slim. But it would be really cool if they had a Leviathan Shoal sub-faction for these guys, because I know that these are a sub-faction that are basically getting an extended book or an extended sheet out into a full faction. But I don't know if that means that they then have their own sub-factions. And I think it would be really fun to have a Leviathan Shoal sub-faction that was really just Anointed. I'd run that list. It would be hilarious. I'd have a lot of fun with that list. Just really like limiting how many turns you can take and trying to counter, high count lists would be super fun with that. I think that would be hilarious. But who knows? Yeah. So that's it. I'm not gonna wobble on too much this time. Just fun lore. Tomorrow there's a really fun video coming. So check back on the channel for that. It's a competition that somebody won. I'll explain all about it tomorrow. It was ran in the main Discord, and somebody wrote a really nice piece of lore, and it would be fun, I think, if everybody were to read it or listen to it, because part of the prize, I guess, was me reading it and making a video about it. So yeah, tune back tomorrow for that. It's going to be a good one. And that's really it for this video. The first of my series on Conquest, The Last Argument of Kings, is also coming at the end of the week. So I hope you all enjoy that one too. But that's it. Thank you so much for watching, and all the best.